here we are again, and welcome back everybody. We've moved indoors now because we've been at this for a little while. I've enjoyed lunch and a walk at the beach, an awesome dinner, a fabulous dessert.
Thank you, Fiona.
And thank you, Fiona. We've got to take our hat off to Fiona.
Beautiful.
For her hospitality, and you, Grant. Thanks so much.
Pleasure, man.
And we're not going to have any noises, any background bird noises now because it's too late. The birds are all sort of quiet.
Yeah, and the kangaroos don't make as much noise when they're chewing the grass. So yeah, it's all good.
That's cool. Awesome. And I just really wanted to talk about the next chapter of the book, so chapter 5, which is about aligning our multiple brains. And the term aligning your multiple brains, to me, suggests that, if you think about it, does that mean that our multiple brains are not aligned? And if they aren't aligned, are they always not aligned? And when we realign them, can we have them realigned on a permanent kind of basis so that we can always make wise decisions, if that's the best way to make great decisions? So I know that before I became an MBIT trainer and before I became an MBIT coach, I know that I definitely had challenges around feeling like I was on song, so to speak. And usually around those times, I would, for lack of a better term, trip myself up, especially when I was going about trying to do something that I was really passionate about, because there were other things would come in and stop me from going down that path and stop me from doing that. And I thought that it was just, a problem that I had, or, I wasn't up to the task, or I wasn't good enough. There was a million reasons why I could come up with why I wasn't doing something. So,
and for all those MBIT coaches watching how Bill just articulated that, I hope you noticed the gestures and we're calibrating exactly how he was mBraining himself in those situations where things would come up and about, I wasn't good enough, yes, etc. Yes. So, but when there was about something you really wanted to do, I wanted to do it, your head was probably into the story of what you really wanted to do, but there was stuff at a gut level that was somehow or other holding yourself back. So, but I hope that was obvious, because that was just Bill doing his thing. It was not scripted in any way, shape or form.
Right, so not only was that not scripted, that was actually me sort of talking especially about my experience with public speaking. So I'm quite comfortable with it now, but prior to doing the MBIT coaching, because I was then also coached by an MBIT coach, and prior to doing the course and prior to even knowing about the field, there is no way I would have been able to get up and do a public speaking gig, especially knowing that there were so many eyes watching me, but most importantly, I would have been really shit scared.
So to speak.
Scatologically
marking this out. Right.
About not getting up there and not doing that because I didn't want to put myself in danger.
Yeah.
So that was a massive question.
Yeah.
But to get back to what originally I asked, and what I really sort of want to hear you chat about is aligning our multiple brains then also sort of presupposes that often they're not aligned.
Yes.
So what is it about that what can we learn from that? How can we align our brains, and how can we remain aligned?
Yeah. So I can answer that in a dozen different ways, and one way that comes to mind is if we look at spiritual traditions, like say Buddhism. The Buddha, was a historical figure who learned to become enlightened. So the nature of the universe is ongoing change, that everything's impermanent, and from physics has validated this. The nature of the universe is impermanence and process and flow, and there are no things. It's all process and energy. At the base level, it's all energy and vibrating strings and all sorts of stuff. So that themselves are quantum processes that are spread in space and time. So in an ongoing universe of change, there will be suffering if you try to grasp after permanence. It doesn't exist. And so what you need to do, he said, is in an impermanent world where there's suffering because you attempt to grasp after permanence that doesn't exist, you need to come from compassion and calmness first. And from compassion you can then learn to find creative ways to work in the world that allow courage to be able to move forward, to flow in the nature of the flow of the universe. So if you go and sit in a cave and meditate, you'll learn to control your neurophysiology, you'll learn to be able to tap into this aligned wisdom that starts at the heart. With enough practice, and let's come back to that idea of enough practice, you can build neural circuit propensities to ensure that your default base state is to be aligned, to be integrated, to be fully you, present in the moment, mindful. And mindfulness isn't just about head-based mindfulness. And it's not just about breathing in the body as just a piece of functional meat, pump and some plumbing that you become mindful of. It's about the fact that you are mindful. Your mind is running on multiple brains and adaptive nervous systems. So the whole of you is what you need to become fully mindful of in every moment, and you can learn to do this. Now, we don't learn to do this in the Western world. There is nothing on the back of our birth certificates about how to drive our multiple brains. At school, we are not taught to learn to tap into and trust the deep intelligence and wisdom, to self-calm, to note and calibrate when we're not, when our autonomic mode is not in coherence, and to bring that laser-like integration of head, heart and gut and all the deepest expression of you into daily life. We're not taught that. We are taught to focus on thinking, to hold our neurophysiology rigid, to breathe in ways that aren't diaphragmatic breathing, etc. So we're actually Western, and then of course in the Western culture with its propensity for all head or head-gut processing in corporations, etc. We're things like emotional intelligence are sort of tapped on after the fact, which is stuff about the heart and some of the visceral intelligence. So what we have is we actually learn and practice being unintegrated. Right.
We learn and practice to be unintegrated.
Yeah.
Wow.
Largely. And we're all attempting to get back to being integrated, because when we popped out of the womb, we're pretty integrated. We get taught through a lot of reinforcement, contingencies of reinforcement, to say my heart wants this and my gut's saying this, but ignore that. Let's just go off the logic of the head.
Right.
Like, sorry, Jimmy, that's not logical. So, you've got to go off the logic of the head. And the head is really powerful and really important. And we're not denigrating the head brain at all. What we want is the head brain to be in beautiful coherence with the heart and gut brain, all of them operating through an autonomic mode of balance, so that the most adaptive intelligencing that you can do emerges. So,
sorry, I'm going to quickly interrupt you just before you go to that next part of the point. The head brain's got the most neurons though, right?
Yeah.
So
it's got something like 80 billion neurons.
So does it kind of make sense that because it has the most neurons, as a result of that, it also tends to have the more control over the situation?
Certainly has the most say, shall we say.
The most say.
Now, it has the most say because it's the one in control of language.
Right.
Articulated out language and internal dialogue. Because it has the most say, it gets listened to because it's the loudest.
Right.
And so it also it takes the representation from these areas, brings it up into the limbic structures of the head brain, and then brings that in symbolically, symbolic communication into the frontal lobe awareness. So, of course, that's why it's developed all these amazing technologies. Amazing technology developed are largely been developed by the creativity of the head brain, and we see these results out in the world and we go, oh wow. But it's not the head brain that's responsible for how we relate to others at a heart-to-heart level. And of course a lot of relationships nowadays are failing because people aren't bringing that deep heart resonance to their relationships. They're not tapping in at a heart level, and they're not getting that oxytocin expression and the things that are needed, the neurohormones of bonding, etc., because people are doing their friendships over abstracted processes like Facebook. I've got 1,000 face friends. Well, they're real friends. Are they people you actually have broken bread with, eaten with, shared pheromones with, connected with at a deep level, been there for, and they've been there for you? Have you felt the resonance of their heart? No. So one of the things I want to come back to, though, is that notion I said of practice and learning. So neurons that fire together wire together. Neurons that are out of sync unlink. So neural networks as patterning systems are not static. The brain is a verb. It's a process, not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly changing, and nowadays I did some study just last year with Professor Idan Segev, one of the leaders in the field of neuroscience at the moment, one of the leaders in the field of what's called the Blue Brain Project. And he showed some state-of-the-art, like just released video, and gave us permission to use it now in our workshops, of what's called two-photon microscopy. So it's the ability to peer in and with very refined precision now, see in vivo, in living tissue, in brains, you can actually watch the dendrites grow. You can watch the structure of the neural network of the brain change on an hour-by-hour, day-by-day basis.
Right.
You actually see synapses forming and then going away if they weren't used. And when you see this video footage, you actually see the brain is like a living, moving, dynamic, changing. It's not bunches of wires, solder joints static. It's not fixed and solid and rigid. It's actually constantly changing, and the microglia are gardening the connections and it's creating neurotrophic factors and allowing bits to grow and then eating bits away that aren't being used. And it's an incredibly live adaptive system. It's an ecology in the garden of the brain. And what's true for the head brain is true for the heart and gut brain and the autonomic nervous system. We have neuroplasticity in all of these brains. Yeah. They are constantly changing. So the brains that think or process change. The feelings that you run in your heart change the structure of the heart brain. So if you do compassion, you'll build the neural structures for compassion. It's like building a muscle. You build the muscles for compassion in your heart. In the gut, they're the same. So when we talk about aligning and engaging, if you've been non-aligned and non-engaged, then you'll actually have grown neural structures for non-alignment. You'll have grown patterns and propensities for non-alignment. A habit is a representation of neural structures, neural structuring.
Right.
And the neural structuring keeps itself, it changes to stay the same, even in the face of adaptive environmental changes. It'll keep adapting and changing to keep its functioning and processing constant. That's one of the as you know from Dr. Michael Merzenich, Professor Merzenich, and his work on neuroplasticity. He's one of the leaders in the field of neuroplasticity. I know you've been and spoken to him.
I have.
Merzenich says that the disadvantage of neuroplasticity is that it can keep things constant. Because it is so adaptive. The brain is so adaptive, it can keep itself constant, even in the face of changing environmental stimuli. So you've got to know how to work with these neural networks, how to engage them, how to ensure that they integrate. When you know how to do that, and as Dr. Merzenich points out, it's actually quite simple, and it doesn't take very long. Over a period of, say, 3 months, but elapsed time maybe less than 40 hours of elapsed of actual time doing the neuroplasticity work, you can make massive shifts in people who've been stroke victims from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, never got any real rehab because they didn't know about neuroplasticity, and now they can be in their mid-70s, in their 80s, and he can, in very short periods of time, give them back to full function. But you've got to know how to directionalise that neuroplasticity. And so this is what we're talking about with this engagement. So are people fully engaged at the moment? No, because we ensure we take these little kids who are relatively engaged and integrated, and we imperfect them. There's, for example, research on the autonomic nervous system. There's been a huge amount of research on the autonomic nervous system over the last 5 years. Well, literally 6,000 papers, scientific papers coming out a year. It's impossible to keep up with. And what they've been looking at is what directionalises the autonomic nervous system and how the autonomic nervous system directionalises the other brains. Because whatever mode the ANS is in, it shifts the modes of the head, heart and gut brain. So if you're in sympathetic dominant mode in the autonomic nervous system, it kicks the head, heart and gut brain. And you're in stress mode, your head, heart and gut brain go into stress mode, go into operating from a stress perspective. So you think stressful thoughts, you feel stressful feelings, you have stress in your hormones, the endocrine system kicks in, your immune system kicks into stress mode, everything goes into fight or flight, as into survival mode. You don't do your wisest thinking, your wisest processing from that place, from a stress state. And there's a huge body of research on decision making that shows that when you stress people, it downregulates their ability to make effective decisions, both intuitive and cognitive. So the autonomic nervous system and its neuroplasticity is going to be key in that alignment, because it's the communication bus between and control bus between all three of the brains.
Right.
And so you need to be able to bring that into alignment. And if you start at a young age and put people into stressful situations like school, where you make people compete and be winners and losers and have poor self-esteem, or if we go back even earlier, and this is some of the research that I wanted to share with you on the autonomic nervous system, they find that children that aren't securely attached, that is, if they pop out of the womb and in the first 6 months they don't get nurturing behaviours from the mother, you know, ongoing guaranteed nurturing behaviours. If they get a bit of nurturing that gets taken away, etc., they don't get what's called securely attached. It actually shifts their autonomic mode and makes them highly autonomic reactivity. So they're more reactive to sympathetic. They overreact to stressors. They go into stress mode much more quickly. Their sympathetic nervous system fires up really quickly. And it shows up.
So they kind of act out.
It shows up as they get older and older, and even into adulthood. You can track back to stuff that happened in the first 6 months, even in the womb. It builds the propensities. These neural networks are firing together and wiring together. They're adapting and changing to an environment that they're experiencing. But once they've built these neural propensities, unless you know how to do the shifts, the neural network's plasticity will keep it changing to stay the same, even in the face of a different environment. You've now grown up. You're now no longer in that stressful environment. You don't have to worry about whether your mother's nurturing or not. You can be self-nurturing, and you could find a partner who's nurturing. You can go and get psychological counselling, do all sorts of things to start changing your neural networks. But a lot of people don't. They end up, I saw some research just the other day, which I posted on the mBit Facebook page, about how people with low self-esteem go and find partners who do behaviours to keep them in low self-esteem. They look for partners who...
Wow.
Yeah, so these sorts of things then ongoing. This is just a physical expression into the world of that lack of integration. If you're not integrated, you'll go looking in the unconsciously in the world to find things that recapitulate your model of the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So can we then come back to integration? Yeah, and it's a practice. You've got to, on a daily basis, practice certain breathing, certain visualization, certain ways of communicating, certain ways of being, and certain ways of doing. And neuroplasticity is guided by doing. So the being comes out of doing. So and emotional doing. So you've got to have the feeling, the doing, and then the being comes out of that. So your ways of being are generated out of your ways of feeling and doing. And these things, if you shift them on a daily basis, it's some very simple yet profoundly powerful practices, as you know, start to make incredible differences in a fairly short period of time, because you directionalize the neuroplasticity of the alignment of the head, heart, and gut. You know what Chapter 5 is all about, neural integrative engagement. And so this is why it's so important to understand how you engage, how you integrate, and when you're not, and what are the indicators when you're not, so that you can go awareness, pattern interrupt, install new pattern.
Right. So that brings me back to my recent experience with the loss of connections from the head to the leg, right? So as you know, after the brain surgery that I had, I woke up in the morning and after the surgery, and I couldn't walk. So my left leg wasn't sending the messages to my brain to let it know that it was to let the brain know that it's in a specific position and it's okay to move and take the next step. So what you're saying is that in that short 3 weeks that I spent in rehab, I've actually created new pathways, new neurons, new connections between my head
new synapses,
and my leg to actually get that leg moving again.
Yep, and your sensory motor systems all the way through from what's happening in parts of the parietal lobe, the connections down into the cerebellum, in some very deep connective ways. You're making new pathways, new connections, so that you can once again you're fully functioning. We went for a walk down the beach. You wouldn't know that only just a few short weeks ago you were there, not able to move one side of your body after brain surgery. So incredible what can be done with the right focus, the right intention and emotionality, and the right behaviour. You could have lied in that hospital bed with intention, feeling all the feelings you want, but if you didn't do the actions, if you didn't do the behaviours, you wouldn't have got those neural shifts, those new neural growths, those new neural patterns. Equally, you could have done the behaviour, but given it no attention,
And been all sloppy in my walk.
And you would have grown, neural connections would have maintained sloppiness in your walk, deficit on that side, etc. And that's why, you know, Dr. Merznick talks about you've got to give focused attention. You've got to get the emotionality into it. It's got to be, you know, and you've got to do the actions.
Yeah.
And you do all three together, laser-like stuff happens. Amazing, incredible shifts happen very, very quickly.
Yeah.
The neural patterning systems of the multiple brains can shift very, very quickly. You can make profound changes in your life very quickly. So you've got to know how. Because if you keep doing it ineffectually, if you keep doing it the way you've always done it, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. You know, if you're doing low self-esteeming and you recapitulate that model of the world by doing behaviours that lead to others treating you as if you're, you know, worthless,
right,
then you'll be going, see, I knew I was worthless at an unconscious level. But if you do things in a way where people respond positively, go, wow, look at that, Bill, that's incredible, it's amazing, you're an amazing man. You go, see? Oh my God, and your neural networks of high self-esteeming, of deep self-compassioning come alive, and then the more they come alive, the more neurons fire together, wire together.
Right, right.
What an amazing difference. You can turn your life around. Everything from the physical, you know, had a bleed in the brain, it's damaged a part of the neural circuitry of the head brain. Look, I can regrow new neurons, reconnect in ways that are incredible.
Yeah, so I certainly found it incredible to actually go into surgery knowing that. So I'm asking these questions as if I'm a novice and I don't understand.
No, you do fully understand because you've lived it and made it work for you.
So for the sake of people listening that haven't had the opportunity to sort of delve into mBraining yet, is really why I asked that question. Specifically also because going into the surgery, knowing that allowed me to go into the surgery really comfortable and confident in the outcome without any gut reactions. So I wasn't doing any fearing. Now, I knew they were going to open my head up, but my biggest part of the challenge with getting into the surgery was actually allaying the concerns of all the people around me.
Yeah, that's right.
Not actually me.
Yeah, because they're going, what's going on? How come you're so relaxed?
Yeah.
We're worried for you. So relax, it's all okay.
Yeah.
I know the outcome will be good because I understand the process and how adaptive and neuroplastic these circuits are in my head brain, in my autonomic nervous system, etc. And of course, you know, the head brain connects deeply into the autonomic nervous system. After stroke and various head brain damage, you get, you know, we know that we get things like autonomic storms, sympathetic storming, stuff like that. When you start to understand that, and you know you have processes for calming the sympathetic nervous system through simple breathing and guided visualization processes, and you understand the neuroscience of it, like we explain in our MBit coaches, down at the level of the detail, baroreceptors and how you work with them, and you know, diaphragmatic and the co-innovation. When you start to understand all that, you go, oh, it makes complete sense. And this is the convincer. This is the head-brain convincer that, you know, MBit brings. That's why, you know, we can't harken back to earlier today, much earlier today, in the first one of the first questions you asked, so chapter 1. So why is it so important to convince people?
Right.
Because the convincing brings power. It also brings additional distinctions. And those distinctions are tools. Like the Eskimo has words for snow that we don't. They've got tools for dealing with snow. You now have tools for dealing with your amazing, distributed, multiple intelligencing and how to work with it. And when you do that, wow, life changes.
Amazing results, and I'm really, you know, and it's really amazing that I can be here. You know, we're talking about not even 3 months after being out of hospital. You know, I'm here, and I've driven here, and I've been able to
4-hour drive, and you've spent all day interviewing me, and we've been walking on the beach, and you know, going for a drive just before, you know, out to see the kangaroos, etc. Even in the dark, less than 3 months after having had major brain surgery from a major brain bleed. That's the only reason they had to open your head up. So you know, they don't do it because they just want to peer inside. You can use functional MRI for that. You know, PET scanners. So so it is pretty incredible that the way you're able to take your knowledge of the multiple brains and the neuroplasticity and use that then to guide your behaviour to be able to do the work you needed to do in a very calm and focused way and get the amazing results you've gotten. I think it's a credit to you, and it's a credit to the technology of understanding the nervous system that makes up the whole mind-body system, and knowing that from here down isn't just a chunk of meat that does pumping and plumbing. It actually has incredible levels of intelligence that you can call on to guide the healing processes. Because remember, something like 80% of the immune function in the body is done by or controlled by the enteric nervous system, the gut brain. The gut brain is responsible for a lot of the core self, not self processes, including the immune function, which does self, not self, and good self, bad self. So when your gut brain is not abreacting, when your gut brain's not gut reacting to what's going on, it hasn't gone into fear, it's in a most adaptive place to be able to control that immune function.
Right.
And the enteric nervous system works with the autonomic nervous system to control a large amount of immune function. But the autonomic nervous system synapses down onto and communicates directly to the immune system. And sympathetic versus parasympathetic mode shifts the two arms. You know, there's largely two arms in the immune system, and they do different things. And so when you can control your autonomic nervous system, you can control immune function. And that's the message, for example, of Wim Hof, the Iceman, the guy who can do these incredible things.
Look up Wim Hof, people.
It's Wim, W-I-M, Hof, H-O-F. The Iceman is, I think, Google on that. It's incredible, and they've done scientifically they've scientifically studied him to prove that he can do what he says, which is he can consciously control his autonomic nervous system and thereby his immune function.
Yeah.
And he's taught it now to others, and they've put those in scientific studies and validated that yes, this is absolutely true. So when you can start to work with incredible power and choice and coach others and yourself, the ones you love, coaching doesn't have to be formal coaching, it can be informal coaching in that we're all coaches. Because we're all coaching ourselves to live our best life, and we're coaching those we love, our families and friends and colleagues.
Yeah.
We're all coaches, and so to have a technology, and to have a book like mBraining, which is meant to be the textbook for the field of how to coach your multiple brains. So yeah, are we all integrated? Well, I believe we kind of pop out of the womb integrated, then we get unintegrated, and you can either spend decades in a cave, learning how to be the Buddha, or you can grab biofeedback systems like we use in MBIT, like the HeartMath biofeedback system, which are tools for being able to access the sorts of refined levels of information that otherwise you can't get access to. Inexpensive tools with technologies of understanding of powerful techniques that are really simple to do. And practice them in a laser-like focus way, you start to get laser-like focus results in your life.
Right. Yeah.
So you can do amazing things like you've done with coming through brain surgery and coming out and taking something where you couldn't move the whole of the side of your body, and now, wow.
Yeah.
Nobody would know.
I still can't get my head around it,
so to speak.
Yeah. Because, it's...
You don't have to get your head around it, that's a good thing. You just, as long as you're bringing your heart and gut and head all aligned to it, then it's really, really cool. Now, one of the things I just, this makes it a bit long, I apologise for the length of some of these answers.
We've got a bit of time.
But I want to add as much value as possible. So if we talk about Chapter 5, one of the things that's important, and it harkens back to what we were just saying for the Chapter 4 question, and it actually speaks to the work of Dr. Merzenich on neuroplasticity. Merzenich talks about one of the key things that drives plasticity, for good or for bad, is what he says, signal to noise ratio. It's noise in the system. One of the things that we looked at in our modelling work and for MBIT and also from a scientific perspective was in terms of what the characteristics of neural networks are and how signal to noise ratio works. So if you want to get integration, you've got to get the communication that's going on. We have a thing called as you know, called the MBIT roadmap. The first step is getting to autonomic balance. Next step is get your three brains, your multiple brains communicating. The next step after that is to get them to integrate, the line, and then to take them to highest expression, and which is, as we know, is compassion, creativity, and courage for the heart, head, and gut brain in that sequence. And out of that will emerge wisdom. It's not a specific step. Wisdom is emergent out of coming from highest expression, aligned and in communication from autonomic balance. So that's the simple four-step heuristic or four-step process for how you guide somebody or yourself into doing more wisdom in your life. In order to get that integration to occur, you've got to get that really solid communication occurring. In order to do that, you need to open up these channels of communication. Of course, the more you do it, these channels are neuroplastic. So the more you do it, the stronger neurons that fire together, wire together. The more synapses, neurons, etc., the more powerful those communication channels get. In order to get them to that point, you've got to start watching your signal-to-noise ratio. So it comes back to your question. If you eat all the wrong food, if you eat crap, if you fill your gut, so there's lots of folk wisdom around. Don't try and make wise decisions on a full stomach.
Yes.
Don't eat a really complex meal and then have to make some really impactful, far-reaching decisions.
Yeah.
There's not the time to do it. People like the American Indians and many other spiritual traditions, in order to tap into deep wisdom, which they thought was coming from, the universe, the great grandfather, Yahweh, wherever, they would go and do vision quests. In order to prepare for a vision quest, they would fast.
Wow.
Fasting, if you think about it, empties the gut from the prime function having to digest food.
Yes.
Allows the neural networks of the gut to be able to just digest and process ideas and thoughts and information coming from head and heart. So if you want to tap into deep intuitive wisdom, you don't want a gut that's massively full, massively stressed, busy doing stuff that is very complex, trying to sort, do immune function to say, the molecules in this from a pathogen, is the molecule in this a piece of food, do I need this piece of food, should I shit this out, should I absorb it, what should I do, gardening the incredible flora, so things like making sure your gut flora is right. There's something like 100 trillion cells in the gut flora. There's more cells in the microbiome, in the gut flora in your gut, than the whole of your body. So the gut-brain, the enteric nervous system, actually interacts directly into this microbiome. And it's like a gardener trying to fine-tune it. But if you keep dumping sugars and crap and chemicals and bits of fertilizer that come out of oil and hydrocarbons that are still in the food, various toxic chemicals that we use to pesticide residues and stuff like that, if you dump those into this incredible ecology, then the gut brain's, the microbiome's going to, some of the wrong bacteria, the wrong organisms will grow. And then your gut brain will be just flat out trying to keep your microbiome in any sort of state that keeps you vaguely healthy.
Right.
Don't expect to get intuitive decision making out of it. If you've got digestion problems, when you've got bad indigestion, you've got gut burn, then you can't think straight. You can't. Anytime your gut has been really awry, you cannot think logically.
Yeah.
And so what that means is that if you're trying to do the dance from head, heart and gut, to integrate yourself, you need to do things like periodic fasting. Use probiotics to get your gut right. Eat organic foods and things that aren't full of toxic chemicals. If you want to live the wisest life, the most effective life you can, bring the whole of your human spirit alive, you need to put stuff in that will assist and aid the enteric nervous system to do that.
That sounds really similar to, so your explanation of how you can't do processing and you can't do thinking straight, thinking clearly if your gut brain's affected. Well, that sounds very similar to the way I experienced being able to make sort of head-based cognitive decisions, where we can go through just some, logical thinking processes with blood in my head. Because of the fatigue, right? So the brain was sort of overworking to just deal with what was going on there, let alone trying to work with new information.
Get other regional cerebral blood flow when you've got a bleed into one part of your brain that's causing damage, and your immune system in your head is trying to repair damage and shut off blood flow and put all its focus, and the microglia and astrocytes are all busy trying to keep your head in one piece, so to speak.
Right.
And you're trying to go, I'm going to do a heap of serious, intellectual logic processes. I'm going to start learning calculus right now. No, it's not going to happen, right? So exactly, and in fact, there are many processes that within the immune system when it detects damage that release messenger molecules called cytokines, which cause down-regulation of the whole mind-body system and try to shut you down from overthinking things, etc.
Right.
For example, there's one beautiful example that the gut brain produces. Now I must say we're really starting to go over time on this answer this question, so we'll finish this up fairly quickly. But the drugs like exogenous drugs that you take from the outside, like Valium, for example, only work because we have endogenous equivalents, internal equivalents. So these exogenous ones mimic a little pill mimics the naturally occurring drug that you have in your system that evolved to be able to do the task. So something like a Valium, right, a benzodiazepam, etc., only works as a calmative because we have self-calming equivalents.
Right.
Now what happens is in times of massive stress, your gut brain will actually produce an endogenous, an internal version of Valium. Express it into the bloodstream so that it'll go up and get to the head brain, and it'll down-regulate and calm the head brain down. Because in a time of massive danger, massive stress, when things have just gone way beyond what you can cope with cognitively, the whole of you doesn't want you running around like a headless chook, so to speak.
Yes.
Your head making stupid decisions, got you running around outside where the saber-toothed tiger might, suddenly attack you.
Right.
So what it does is it calms you down. It literally sedates you. The gut brain says, I'm going to shut the head brain down now, so I'm going to express certain neurochemicals into the bloodstream, which are going to go up and drug the head brain down. So the mind-body system has an incredible wisdom and intelligence. This gut brain isn't just a chunk of plumbing that's making some smelly things come out the end. It's doing some pretty intelligent, wise things, or at least it will if you allow it to.
Right.
But if you stress it, if you get too much noise and not enough signal, if you swamp the signal with the noise of all sorts of stuff,
Right.
and that includes, like, for example, in the heart with emotions.
Yes.
If you spend a lot of time focusing on anger and how sort of celebrating the anger of a situation. This really makes me angry. No, you're angry and you're always talking about the anger and you're really focusing on this damn thing. This anger puts your heart into a very sympathetic dominant state, and it's a stressful state. It actually is physically damaging to the heart
As well.
Absolutely, there's research that absolutely validates this, that negative emotions like anger, hatred, etc. do serious damage to the heart, high increased incidence of heart attack, etc. So these negative emotions, not necessarily negative, but they're often called survival emotions, which can be used to motivate you to move towards or away from danger, or towards resolving some situation, but they're only when they're contextually appropriate. If you keep overusing them and becoming an angry soul, shall we say, you end up damaging the heart, you damage the neural networks, you build the neural circuits of angering, so you increase the probability you'll be doing more angering, which increases the probability to do more angering. Ultimately it damages the heart. It's another equivalent of how you won't get neural integrative engagement if you're operating out of sympathetic stressful dominance. The heart brain kicks the autonomic nervous system into stressful dominance because it's monitoring the head, heart and gut brains and going, oh, I'm getting a strong signal of stress, of danger, puts it into that mode. The gut brain kicks into, oh gee, well I better go into sympathetic dominant mode. The head brain goes, oh, I better go into sympathetic dominant. You get a lot of right hemisphere dominance thinking where you do a lot of survival emotion processing and thinking. So then you start ruminating and thinking about all these angry thoughts, which just gets your heart even more angry, and your gut goes into, well, I really can't eat right now, and and when I do eat, I get a bit of indigestion, which just kicks your whole system. So it's another example of how within the challenges of the 21st century life, and with the amount of people that we interact with, which we didn't evolve to. We evolved to work with something like about 100 to 150 in a small village. We evolved in villages. So now we live in these global villages where we're interacting with thousands of people over the internet, but that effectively, semantically feels like we're in this huge tribe. It's way beyond our emotional cognitive capacity to cope with. At work we interact with how many people and how many customers and clients, etc. And in the end we've swamped ourselves beyond what our naturally evolved capacities are. And so unless you bring some very focused, scientifically based abilities to learn to grow the capacities of your neural networks to operate in an integrated, calm and balanced way, then you can end up really living an unhappy life. And of course, as we just saw, the research shows that you'll end up sending out messages to other people who will recapitulate your model of the world for you. If you're unhappy, the people around you will make sure you continue to be unhappy. But if you're happy, happy people make others happy, who then make themselves happy. So. And
like track
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Like track to like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, that's an awesome answer to my question. Thanks so much. To end this episode, you mentioned Facebook, and I know there's an mBraining
mBraining
discussion
Facebook page,
going on Facebook.
Yep.
Where would people go? And
so if you just go to Facebook and search for mBraining, the word mBraining, you'll find I post on there a couple of times a day with new findings, new information, sayings, things that back up the thesis of mBraining, and we have an active and large community. There are also some Other private groups for MBIT coaches. So if you're an MBIT coach, make sure you go to Facebook or contact me directly at mbraining@gmail.com. And if you're a certified MBIT coach, then we'll get you on those private groups where we have a really active wisdom community of practice, where we share information and ideas, and I share the latest research. And of course, there are other pages, Facebook pages, that various MBIT trainers, yourself,
like
etc.,
myself,
have some vibrant and great pages where you're also sharing some really cool and interesting information. So keep checking out. I think if you search for the word mBraining or MBIT on Facebook, you're going to come across some really cool and interesting and vibrant places and communities where we share some really good support, some really great information.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Grant. So that's it for this episode. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for watching and for coming to our page.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.